Welcome to John's Jeep Garage. Today we're going to show you how to change the transmission fluid on a Jeep Wrangler JK. Specifically, it's a 2012 to 2018 Jeep Wrangler JK with an automatic transmission. The model Jeep that we're going to be looking at is going to be a 2016 Jeep Wrangler. Now, the Jeep that I have in front of me here is a 1998 TJ, and as I said, we're going to be focused on the JKs. But you're gonna need in any of the Jeeps the ATF +4 transmission fluid. So make sure that you have this on hand and not just the ATF fluid. The other thing is we used a Wix, WIX 58845 kit, which had the transmission filter and the rubber gasket, the pan gasket. And that's what we chose to use, but you will find other choices out there on the market. We did not do this on site. We did it at a site actually in another state. And I would suggest this anywhere. We laid a tarp out and we had some oil pads, because if you're just going to be removing the pan and trying to drain it in a catch pan, you're still going to make a little bit of a mess. And this is one way to help protect the environment and also protect your garage floor. The other thing is that when you do start your project, there is a video we have on this channel on how to remove an engine cover, because that many people may not have even been into your engine and removed the cover, but that's how you find your transmission dipstick. So you have to remove the cover first. All right, so let's watch this video. Thank you.
The first thing that we need to do is remove the engine cover. So we're gonna lift up and pull out.
So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to, instead of just going and working on the transmission pan and dropping the transmission pan and angling it to where I'm letting the fluid pour out, kind of an organized pour, which is really a mess. I'm going to use this, and this is a fluid extractor, and this is what I use for my boat. And I'm going to go down the fill tube, and I'm going to remove as much transmission fluid as I can through the fill tube before I start my project. Now, I did see another YouTuber actually use this same piece of equipment. This is called a topsider. In a topsider, if you read about it, you can do it for transmission fluid. I use it more for a boat on an inboard outboard for an oil change. But, and by the way, this is my sticker, so you will not get this sticker on yours unless you send me a note and you want one of my stickers. But so what we're going to do now, so I'm going to make sure the operating range of a transmission on this Jeep JK is 160 degrees, 180 degrees. I'm lucky enough on this JK to have a temperature gauge sensor. I'm going to get it somewhere in that range, and that way it'll have lower viscosity, and then I'm going to extract as much transmission fluid as I can before I start this work. All right, now I'm not going to go through all the details about this. You can go and look at all the fluid extractors out there, and they all have a different operating parameter. The biggest thing about this particular one is you want to make sure that this cap and this cap, when you look at the assembly instructions, put a little oil on the gaskets and really tighten them down, because for this thing not to work, it's usually because there's a seal leak here or here. And you want to make sure you have a good seal, because you're creating a vacuum in this chamber. So number one, look at whatever fluid extractor operating parameters you have, understand how it operates. I'm just going to show you the general concept on this one, and then we will start really changing the transmission gasket filter and fluid. All right, thank you. So my trans temperature is about 149 now. Start off at about 140. I drove it earlier. I want to get it somewhere between 160 and 180. So I'll probably stop when it hits about 170. Quite honestly, if you don't have a temperature sensor, gauge, or any way to measure that, put it in gear, go drive it. I'd say 10 minutes and you're definitely within operating range, and then come on back. And remember, all we're trying to do is just extract as much fluid as we can so we don't make a mess. right. Okay. This says 174. I'm good with that. I'm gonna go ahead and extract as much as I can. Okay, so let's just give you a little basics on this topsider. When you have an empty can, go ahead and pump it about 30 to 40 times to create a vacuum. To do that, you got to make sure this clip is locked in, pinching the hose, so no air can actually make its way in through either the seals or from the end of the hose. Now, if you ever have fluid in there, don't go above 15 pumps. The instructions will definitely tell you if you're gonna have to pump it again and you already have fluid in there to create more vacuum. You know, I think it's 15 to 18 pumps, but don't exceed that. 30 to 40 just when you're gonna start. All right, let's go. Okay, we've pumped it, and now I'm going to remove the transmission dipstick. Before I set it off to the side, I'm gonna take this hose and estimate the length of this dipstick. And then I'm gonna hold it and mark it on the end, just with my hands. Then, that's why I'm holding it, I'm gonna take this tube and start pushing it down to the length of the tube. So right now, I have it in that fill tube just to the length that I marked off on the dipstick. Now I'm gonna take it and push it in a little bit more. Really, I've only gone about 2 inches until I feel bottom. Once I do that, gonna release this, and I expect to see fluid traveling. Boy, look how dirty that fluid is. Ooh, that's working nice. Boy, that fluid is black. Definitely time to change it, and we'll inspect it further. I go back to referring to a boat. You wanna make sure, just like a straw on the bottom of a glass, or that you don't have, this is not connecting to anything at the bottom and plugging it up. You wanna make sure that's flowing really well. I'll give you an example. As I'm pulling this out, you can see it's starting to bubble. But when I push it back in, now obviously I just lost some vacuum. You gotta find that little spot. And I will create a little bit more vacuum to show you. Pinch that first, and then I'll pump this. Okay, I'm finished. And this thing is full. Okay, so the Jeep I'm working on is a 2016 Jeep Wrangler JK. And came all the way over to Louisiana because my daughter owns this Jeep. So I'm doing this, bringing all my tools with me. We're gonna crawl under the underside of this Jeep so you can see exactly what we're doing. So let's crawl under here. Let's see what we got. Here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna start here with the front side of the Jeep. There's your oil pan. As you move down, you start to see, and I know this is upside down. Let me see if I can make it smaller. You start to see your transmission pan right here. And then you go and you have this big cross brace. And then basically you have a T-SKID plate right here. These are 18mm bolts. And on the other side over here, this is for your transfer case. So what we're going to do is we want to remove this pan. And to remove this pan, you would normally do it in such a sequenced way where you can drain it and try to angle it and drain it without making too much of a mess. But as you know, we already drained the transmission fluid, so we'll just have a little bit in there. And I'm going to show you each spot that you need to focus on to remove your pan. On your pan, we're going to look at this right here. This is basically, if you see, the pan fits underneath, butts up against this, but this is like a little clasp. I forgot the technical term, and I'll show it to you, but it's use a Torx bit to remove it for that bolt. And this is a T-30. I think I said T-20 earlier. And you're going to have 6 of these. 1, 2. This is on the engine side of the Jeep. Then you're going to have another 2 across from each other. That's in the middle of the pan. And then you're going to have these that are right above this brace. And the way I'm going to get to that is I'm going to actually remove the TSKID plate for the transfer case. I'm going to put a jack under the transfer case, jack it up, let's just say 1.5 to 3 inches, just to get a little bit more clearance. It'll raise this up. Let me get a little close up to that. So there's that one there, and then the one on the other side of the pan. Now I have a Fuel M12 Milwaukee, and I put my T-30 Torx bit on, and I'm really able to, obviously I can get to these really well, but I even have enough space to get to that one as well in the center, and enough space to get to that one. I'm a little aggravated with myself because I didn't bring my M18 Milwaukee wrench, but I'm just using a little cheater bar to start these 18 millimeters, and then I'll just ratchet them out. The 4 bolts holding on this T-skid plate for the transfer case. You'll also hear me saying transmission mount or transfer case mount interchangeably. So I'm going to put a jack under this, push it up about 1.5 inches, just to give myself on the other side, because this whole transfer case transmission is going to lift up, just to give a little bit more gap underneath that pan to get those 2 rear bolts. And I'll show you how I do that. Next step is to remove 3 nuts so that when we jack it up, this transfer case mount is free from the cross member. See that nut? And then we have that one. Try to hard to get some light up underneath. And then that one, which we showed you earlier. But there's 3. And the best way to do it is you tie it on the rear side, this hole, and that hole. And that's basically your bushing nuts you just want to remove before we jack this thing up. Okay, so you're just taking these 3 nuts off so that when you jack it up, it's going to be free as we raise it and not be attached to the cross member. Now let's be careful. When we're jacking it, let's just do it slowly, and we're only going to try to do it about 2 to 3 inches, and we're just trying to get that last set of bolts clear on that pan. So once I've created the space by jacking it up, I then just use my fingers to remove the, actually I have to take that 10 millimeter bolt out, and then I'll be good on that one corner. Okay, I'm not going to go fast speed on everything here. I really want to show you, but right now I'm removing the 10mm bolt on that passenger side front corner. And then once all Torx bolts are removed, and I'm holding the pan so it just stays vertical so I'm not spilling the fluid. If you didn't use an extractor, then a lot of fluid is going to be coming out, and this is the way you would angle the pan into a larger catch pan. Right now, since I did drain it, I know that there's going to be fluid, but minimal amount, so I'm being careful. Now, at this time, this isn't 175 degrees. This fluid needs to be cool. The only time you wanted it warm was when it was being drained. As you can see, the old filter in place. It's moved a little bit when we took the pan off, but all we're going to do is just pull it out. Notice the end. And then we'll just clean up the edge a little bit, let the rest of it drop on these absorbent pads, pig mats, and then I'll dispose of them properly in a can that's, take that to the recycling. But that, I'll take the new filter, if you look closely, right there's the hole. It just plugs in, and like I said, we'll clean up the edge and then put the pan back on. Okay, so the next step is really just to clean the pan, inspect the magnet, and then we're going to put on the gasket. The magnet looks like a small little donut, but we really want to look to ensure that there's no heavy metal shavings on there. If that was the case, then we need to really inspect the transmission and get some professional help. Okay, so my pan is clean now. Magnet's back in place. And then I have my molded rubber gasket. Now, I'm using the molded rubber gasket. So this is, I'm showing you how to put this one back on. If you notice, it's hollow on one side. And I'm just going to fit it. I'm doing this with one hand. Just gonna fit it around the edge of the pan, inside the little molded groove. So you can kind of see, basically it's now in place and ready to put back on. Right now, this is my new filter, and I'm gonna put this back in position. Okay, so now we're going to take the filter and we're going to locate the spot for the secondary pin support right there. We're going to make sure that that goes in, and then the main port going in for that filter. Once we secure that and set it in place, we then need to get ready for the pan. And as we did before, the pan already has its seal on. So we just got to be careful. Remember how we took the pan off. You got to slide it low and then raise it once it gets in position. So I carefully slide everything into position, but then I start with the 10mm bolt and the pan bolt, and that is on the passenger front corner. I start there first, and then I just move around the pan using my hands to hand tighten it all the way around and ensure the pan is secure before I use a Torx wrench, and then also torque it to spec. In layman's terms, it's really 7 and 9 foot-pounds, and so that is just a snug fit with just a small bump to tighten. It is a very light torque, but I would do kind of a cross tightening just to ensure that pan is secured equally on each side. Okay, once the pan is tightened and secured, we want to go ahead and lower the jack so we can get that support back on that cross member, put those bolts back on, and then we're going to put the T-skid plate back on. Okay, so we hope this video has shown you the detail you needed to be able to get to this point so far. Now what we need to do is put the transmission fluid back into our Jeep. So we're going to have to warm it up back to temperature again. Now, you can get a cold fill indication in the beginning. And there's a range on your dipstick, and we'll show you in some pictures on where that cold fill position is. But I would start there. Then I would get it back to an operating temperature of somewhere around 175 degrees. And then I would check the hot fill indication just to ensure that you did not overfill the transmission fluid. Besides that, once you get the right amount in there, you're going to test drive it, and you're also going to check for leaks, and then you're done. So we appreciate it. Thank you for watching.
Now we're going to put the cover back on. You want to make sure it's connected to the back, and then just place it back on top. If you're having any trouble with this, you can reference back to our video on how to do so.